Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, I've got a lovely, delightful guest. Her name is Melissa Howard. Melissa is a female empowerment photographer as well as a confidence strategist. And today we're going to be sharing lots of information around specific relationship challenges that Melissa might have gone through. So first of all, let me welcome you, Melissa.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. And Melissa, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and specifically, I suppose what I'm curious about is what relationship challenges are in that history of your life story.
Yeah, where to begin? So just a little bit about me. So I live in the northwest of England, a little place called the Wirral. I've lived here all of my life, which I absolutely love. I don't think I'll ever live anywhere else. And my story with terms of relationships has been really rocky since sort of a very early age. And what I'm really passionate about in what I do now is helping and inspiring people to be more confident in their lives. But where I really target people is the ones that are people pleasers and overachievers, because that was me. I didn't have an identity. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was doing and why. And at the end of the day, I'd come home. I had a false confidence outwardly, and I'd come home and I was an empty shell. So I think for me, the challenges that I've always had is that people-pleasing role with people. So I was always gave everything to other people, and when they didn't give it to me, I'd shut off. I'd feel awful, but I'd shut off, and I'd be like, they broke my trust. So that means if you do it once, I'm not letting you do it again. Certain people are let do time and time again, but majority of people, it's when that trust broke off. I lost a lot of probably good people in my life because I just couldn't speak and verbalize how I felt, because I thought it was easier rather than confrontation to not have that. So I lost friends, I've lost potentially family members through that communication barrier, and relationships as well. So although that is my bag and I help people pleaser and overachievers, I think the transition for me, I don't truly know what the switch for me was. But now I'm a lot more open to it. So I would love to talk to you a little, maybe a couple of those examples in detail, and you can tell me what was going on in my mind.
Absolutely. Do you think there was any event or episode with parents or family members or teachers or friends whilst you was growing up that you can think back to that sort of was the start of this particular mindset that you went on?
Yeah, so when I said that we could have 20 podcasts on this, I wasn't joking. So I was bullied as a child in primary school. I was an only child as well. So I was sort of showered with love. I wouldn't say spoiled, but I was showered with love, which I absolutely loved. But I also craved more. Because it was sort of never ending. So I always wanted more. I was quite greedy. And I also, unfortunately, was abused as a child by a close family member for a period of 3 years. And although it wasn't a traumatic event of sexual abuse, because I didn't know what it was when I was that young, I think from there, I've probably developed, unfortunately, that people-pleasing sort of environment, because I wanted the family to stay together. I wanted everyone to be happy. I wanted to make other people happy, like people made me happy. So I think there's probably a few more in there, but in terms of the past, it's probably those three that really stick out for me.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is that I can definitely empathise and sympathise with you having gone through abuse. I don't know if you know my own personal story, but for me, mine's quite a harrowing one, and I literally did go through some traumatic experiences of rape when I was in my teens. So, that obviously led me then on a path to some very, not only toxic and unhealthy relationships, but also then once I got through that phase, I went on to have, quite unfulfilling relationships. And it wasn't until, I suppose, quite recently in my life, probably into my early 50s, I'm nearly 60 now, that I actually got some insights around it and understood why things happened and why subsequently, I went on to have these types of relationships. And it usually stems from the fact that we all have masculine and feminine energy, Melissa. And usually, if we are in opposite sex attraction relationships, I can't speak for gay relationships because I'm not an expert in that, but I can speak for heterosexual relationships. So if you're somebody that's a woman that's normally attracted to men and vice versa, then what I do know is we all have masculine and feminine energy regardless of our sexual orientation. But if you're the woman in that relationship, then your most strongest, dominant, natural energy is your feminine. Now, what happens is when we get exposed to danger, trauma, which can be at the hands of men through sexual abuse or violence. It can also be when we've been educated to look at men as our role models in how to succeed in the workplace. Those sorts of things, as well as being in competitive type environments, can automatically make a woman default into a masculine energy, because masculine energy is a woman's way of feeling safe. It's the way we protect ourselves. So we start to wear this masculine suit of armour, and it's our default energy that is keeping us safe, it's keeping us protected, it's keeping us in control, but it isn't naturally who we are. And we're not even aware that we're exuding this masculine energy because we're not educated around this stuff. So what happens is then when we start going into relationships, you can quite often attract a toxic relationship because all the man can feel when you're in that relationship is another masculine energy most of the time. So he may not understand why or where that's coming from on a conscious level, but what he is doing is feeling it. So he is feeling there's another masculine energy in the room. So if he's a strong masculine energy himself, he's going to feel like there's confrontation from that masculine energy. He's going to feel like he's not going to see you as his girlfriend, in other words, the woman that he loves. He's going to feel there's another masculine energy in the room and I'm feeling challenged because I'm the man.
No,
does that make sense?
It does. And I do really believe that is probably, I wouldn't say where I was going wrong, because I learned a lot from those periods of life, but I think that's what I do, is go into that masculine energy. It was quite funny you were talking about that, because about 3 years ago I was having a conversation with someone about masculine and feminine. I didn't really understand it, so when she was explaining it to me, I said, "Oh yeah, I'm masculine." She goes, "You're not, you're very feminine." And I went, no, I'm honestly, I'm masculine. She goes, "No, all that I see is feminine." And a guy that I was speaking to about 2 hours before as a friend came up and went, "You've got the biggest balls." And I said, "I think I've got a masculine energy when I speak to men."
Yes.
And it just must be natural.
Yeah, and we get, that becomes our default energy that we naturally live in most of the time. Now, if you're in a relationship, which I was with my ex, and I didn't have this awareness at the time to change things, that this is, stuff that I've learned since that relationship. I was in a 23-year marriage, and for some reason, I didn't feel totally fulfilled in that relationship. We had a very happy relationship. We had 2 lovely children. He was a great father. He was a great husband, but I always felt there was something missing. I always felt a little bit unfulfilled and unsatisfied, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And it wasn't until that relationship finished and I started to do some work and discovered, more information myself around what happens in relationships, I realised, oh my gosh, I was responsible for me feeling unfulfilled in that relationship because he wasn't a strong masculine energy. So what he was doing was allowing me to be the man in that relationship. I was wearing the trousers. I was in control. I made the decisions. I more or less, I suppose, led that relationship and took charge of it because it made me feel safe. But what it did do to him was emasculate him. And I didn't realise that it was me that was doing that to him. It was more masculine I was in that relationship, the more he stepped more into his feminine, because he didn't want to rock the boat. He wasn't a confrontational type guy. In fact, I can't remember ever having an argument with him. So he was more for being more placid and stepping more into his feminine energy to compensate for that masculine energy that I was exuding. And I couldn't understand then why I wasn't finding him attractive. Because as women, we want a masculine man, don't we? But if we're being the man in the relationship, unless he's very strong himself, he'll either feel threatened by that and you'll have lots of conflict, or he'll step more into his feminine and then you won't find him as so attractive and you won't understand even why, unless you've done this sort of work.
And what for you in that situation, how did you come out of that? So obviously you had the light bulb of, hey, I'm wearing the pants, but how, especially after 23 years, how did you kind of either make the decision to leave or make the decision to let's see whether we can swap the roles and see how that works?
It was too late. I actually made the decision to leave before I actually learned, what I know now as an expert in this subject. And obviously that was meant to be divine timing or whatever, because then I went on a massive learning journey. I've been with Paul, my current partner, now for 10 years, and he is a very strong masculine energy. But in the early years, I'd say, he was very much feeling my masculine energy, and quite often about every 3 or 4 weeks we'd have these massive arguments, and I used to think, well, it must be his fault, right? Because I never had this with my ex, and I was with him for 23 years, so I was, pointing the finger and laying blame, and making it out in my own mind that it must be him, because he was always, at these times where we did have these arguments, he was irritable when he'd come home from work, and I used to call it him lighting the fire, because he'd be very, very, snappy. And right. In my response to that, instead of responding in a feminine way and pouring water on that fire that he's just lit, I was pouring paraffin on it, and petrol from a masculine energy point of view, and then wondering why we'd have this conflict. And then, that's when I really got seriously interested in how relationships work and how am I contributing to this being my reality.
And so when you realised that, because obviously you were in the relationship with Paul, and then after a few years you became an expert, like how did it change overnight? Did it take a while? Was Paul open to it?
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's always a work in progress, I think. Actually, awareness is the start, but actually then learning to be conscious of when you are slipping into that masculine energy and challenging yourself and catching yourself is another thing, and it takes, as with anything that you're learning, it takes a bit of practice to get used to thinking, well, now I can sort of more or less catch it and think, whereas I would have retaliated with a I'm right type opinion previously quite regularly, or, become aggressive back to him. I actually either stay quiet, which is a feminine response, to just remain quiet, say something like, I hear you. Another feminine response is to just let him know that he's hurt your feelings. So instead of, retaliating back aggressively on the back of him being aggressive towards you or judgmental towards you, you can just simply go, ow.
Oh, okay.
And let him know that he's hurt your feelings. But sometimes silence is the best. I mean, it takes a bit of work if you're used to retaliating, to zip your mouth up and not bite. But sometimes silence is so powerful, because in that silence, what happens is, for the man, is that he can hear his own aggressive words being repeated back to him. And that's far more powerful and effective for him to hear those words repeated back to him in his own mind than it is for you to say anything at all in terms of him then suddenly having that realization of, oh my God, you know what, I've just really hurt that woman. And so instead of then you becoming divided because there's been a conflict take place, what happens is that all of a sudden he feels close to you and he wants to connect with you. And he might not necessarily say the words "I'm sorry," and certainly not straight away, but you will know by his actions he is.
Yeah. No, that's really powerful, because as I said, with all the different types of relationships, probably especially when you get to an age where you leave the nest and you start in your own life, that is one of the relationships with another human being, in the passionate relationship, where, like, that's what keeps us together, love, isn't it? And if we don't have that, we generally will crave that from elsewhere. And what I'd really love to ask you now and pick your brains about is in terms of relationships with others, in terms of trust. So in the past, if I felt like either a friend or a family member, like, for me, really hurt my trust, and to other people it was nothing, but to me, like, I would never treat somebody like that or speak to them like that. So for me, I'd kind of go, oh, there we go, like, fence is up now, like, that's our relationship gone, no more second chances. And although I'm a lot more aware of that now, I'm very aware that that isn't helpful for me or for them. And learning maybe a couple of tips or skills to be able to deal with that situation. So just to give you an example, I've still got a handful of family members that we still don't talk. I don't have any sort of bad feelings or aggression towards them, but it's been that long that we just haven't got a relationship. So, and I feel like I've missed out on that, and vice versa. I feel like they've missed out on a relationship with me as well. So, hints and tips on how to, especially if other people are experiencing that now, is how we could work around that. Because I think that inner work more than outer work.
Yeah, definitely. It is inner work, and it's all around not only forgiving them for any perceived wrongdoing that you feel that they've done, but first and foremost working with your own forgiveness for yourself. And I'm not saying that if they have served an injustice on you that's condoned within that, but forgiving yourself so that then they don't have that power to negatively impact your life going forward. So for me, for example, what was really powerful was to forgive the guys that assaulted me, because it happened more than once. And it wasn't about forgiving the behaviour, that's unforgivable. But it was about forgiving them so that I could move on and that they could no longer have that negative impact or power over my life going forward. And
do you feel, so in that sense, I'm not talking in the sense of that abuse sector, because especially for me personally as well, we'd never be in contact, we'd never see each other again. But in terms of from a family relationship where it's just a fallout with no sort of aggression or violence there or sexual abuse, is given the forgiveness, is that relationship mendable? How would one approach that, and olive branch sort of situation, to see if they would be open to it?
Yeah, I think there's always room sometimes for an intermediary to sort of test the water on your behalf. Sometimes that works, if you've got a mutual family member or a mutual friend, and you just say, what, I haven't spoken to such for such a long time, I can't even remember now why we fell out, but I'd really love to reconnect with them. would you test the water for me and see if they're open to that? You could do it that way, which is a bit of a more softer, protect yourself type approach. Or you can just do it yourself, but have no expectation around it. Don't perceive if, the answer is no, or don't darken my doorstep again type reaction, that that's a rejection. It's just where they're currently at. So it's all about being realistic about what your own expectations are around that. And the honest answer is to have no expectations, regardless of what the result is of your action, just accept it, that it is what it is.
And I think that's really powerful, because then the next step of that, I'm going really deep, the next step is that if you do mend the relationship, whatever mend looks like, and everything's going fine, and then something happens, like an argument, and you don't remember what you had for tea yesterday, but you remembered what happened on the 15th of September 2001, how it made you feel, exact word was said. Like, how is it possible to not bring all of that back up? Is it possible to kind of accept that, as you say, forgive it, and to have a clean slate?
Yeah, I think, if you have got that connection back again, I think it's then to, agree some boundaries and ground rules, and just say, look, ideally, I feel as I'm in a good situation. I'm happy with how my life's going, and I'm more mature and wiser than what I was previously. And I would never want to be in the situation we were in before, where we were disconnected. So, and just be honest and open, and just say, I want to protect this relationship going forward, and just be honest and open about what you want going forward, to make that as secure for you, so that you can feel that, even if there was another argument, that, we won't let it fester. We'll just agree to disagree, and we'll just agree that, the other person is entitled to their opinion.
Okay. No, I like that. Because I think many women will be able to agree on this, and men, if they listen to that, women are very good at this, is going back into the deep, dark depths of our vaults within our brain and picking them out. To be fair, even men sometimes are quite good at throwing it. If you've had an agreement, you set the boundaries, and then one of them decides to break the boundaries, it's having that probably emotional intelligence and muscle to kind of say, okay, we're going to have to, as you say, ow.
Yes.
We agreed to not do this. Ow. I really think that I'll take that away. I'll be saying ow quite a lot.
Yeah, there's lots of tips as to what, to the way you can respond in a more feminine way, where I refer to it as pouring water on the fire rather than pouring paraffin or fuel or petrol on the fire, and the two are so different. One's a masculine response when you pour in that fuel on the fire, and the other ones are feminine responses. So, that they're all things that take and require a bit of practice. But, another tip would be to just say, I'm sorry you feel like that. How diffusing is that? So if somebody's really been touchy towards you, and you're feeling it's totally unjustified, it totally diffuses it straight away. If you say, I'm sorry you feel like that, it's not that you're saying you're sorry for anything you've done. It's you saying, I'm sorry you feel like that. It's your shit. You know what I mean? But it's a very soft way of letting them know, that they're obviously, they're in a bad place, and you're hearing it.
And from because obviously the people who will be listening to this podcast will be a range of different ages and in different experiences in life. If somebody's been in that spiral for such a long time, is there a way of getting out? And what's the starting point to be able to start getting out?
Working on yourself. Certainly I feel, and it might be quite hard for people listening to hear this, that we create our own relationships, regardless of whether those intimate personal relationships, romantic relationships, or whether they're just friendship type relationships, whatever relationships we've got in our life, we're responsible for creating those. And if they're showing up as good, bad, or indifferent, then we're equally responsible for creating the good, the bad, or the indifferent within those relationships. But to have the really strong, powerful, healthy, high level passion, intimacy, and fulfillment in a relationship with another member of the opposite sex that's really operating at its highest level, it starts with you. So if you haven't got that respect for yourself, that love for yourself, and that appreciation for yourself, you won't actually, you may have it at a superficial level, but you won't have it at a really true level of where, you're exuding that and living that and feeling that and behaving like that is true. It really does start with you. So my starting point when I'm working with anybody is do the inner work, start looking and appreciating who you are and build that great relationship with yourself first and foremost. And don't worry if you are single, enjoy being single. Don't feel it's negative to be single. You can have a great time being single whilst you're working on having that great relationship with yourself, and then you'll attract a great relationship on the back of doing all that fabulous inner work of really loving, appreciating, and realizing you are a fantastic woman in your own right, or man in your own right, and then you attract somebody of that higher vibration to you to have that next level relationship up and onwards.
Brilliant. I absolutely love that. Because I feel that if it's new, so I can't even remember. So I can remember, as I said, what happened in various instances many years ago, but I can't remember when I made the decision that I've got to change to be able to have change in my relationships with people. And I'm really grateful now that the relationships I've currently got, in my eyes, are the healthiest they've ever been. They can always get better from both sides, but as you say, it has to start with yourself, because if it doesn't, you'll always justify and blame rather than actually trying to figure out what is actually going on, and what are the standards, what are the boundaries that we've got, and do we need to relook at them? So I find that really, really helpful. Thank you. You're
very welcome. It is about, taking that responsibility, like you said, rather than laying blame or justifying. It's taking responsibility for thinking, well, how will I have contributed to this situation? Because I really did believe when Paul and I were arguing in the early years that it was his fault, because I had, as I say previously, a 23-year marriage whereby never had an argument more, And so it was really, really so easy for me to point the finger and say it's all his fault, because he'll openly admit that he started the fire, so to speak. In other words, he was the one that would arrive home from work quite often and be quite tetchy and irritable. And straight away, my response to that would be a masculine response, which would then escalate into the conflict. So it wasn't until I started asking myself a bit more, empowering questions around how am I contributing to this, that I started to get some insights and really realise, what, I'm contributing to this just as much as he is, and it's not his fault, and I need to look at managing this and responding in a different way. And that took quite a while to even get to that point where I realised that, it was one of them situations where if you keep on doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. And I keep getting what I always got and kept blaming him. And then, there was a point where I thought, actually, perhaps I need to stop blaming him and ask myself those powerful questions like, well, what is it then? How am I contributing to this? Because I was, far enough down the line of self-development to realise that I was contributing to it. I just didn't know how I was contributing to it and what I could do to change that.
Yeah, and I learned a powerful lesson from a TV programme of all things, in terms of how to respond to situations. So as you just explained, when somebody comes in is tetchy from work, with being a manager leader previously and my partner not being that, and he's moaning about the leader and manager, and I can see it from the leader manager's point of view, and I'm like, what? And it just exploded, because rather than trying to see it from both perspectives, you come home, you just want to tell someone how bad your day was. You don't want to be told that, yeah, but there's other perspectives to look at. And it just kind of like the penny dropped from watching this TV program, because it was someone doing the opposite of me. They were going overboard of like, oh my God, this sounds horrible, and really powering so much love into it that they thought, I just want to punch you. And what they basically said was, whenever somebody is feeling in that space, is acknowledging it by just saying, that sounds really shit. So, I do that with my partner now. I use different words as time, depending on what it is. But it's just that silence afterwards, and it's kind of like it breaks the pattern, because they're used to you going, well, you need to listen to my tips. So you say, that sounds really like, you must feel really bad with that, or how does that make you feel? And like, I wouldn't want to be in that situation. It's just kind of like, just acknowledging where they're at. Absolutely. And then what I find is that they seem to unravel it themselves, and it's like, oh, it's not that bad, really.
I think both sexes appreciate feeling like they're being heard, especially women. One of their biggest complaints is that they don't feel like they're being heard, and then the men's biggest complaint is that women nag, and that's because women don't feel like they're being heard, so they're repeating themselves. So, I think one of the biggest tips around, having some great communication on both sides is to, like you just said, be fully present, listen to what they're saying, and acknowledge that you've heard what they've said, rather than just waiting for them to finish so you can jump in with your opinion. Yes,
that's probably the root of most of my problems. That's what coaching me. Let's coach it out. No, let's listen to what they want to say.
Yeah. Now I can relate to that as well. I was a bit of that ilk, in our previous early years, in terms of putting my coaching hat on straight away. That didn't go down too well either.
Yes. And a lot of people say, well, don't you coach in your relationship? And it's not a good mix.
No. I want to advise it.
Not a good mix.
No. Because, especially as a woman, because, as the woman, being your true feminine power, it's not about, some people confuse with being in your feminine power as it being subservient or submissive. It's not about that at all. It's about acknowledging that you're, a high value feminine woman who's confident, who loves herself, and, that you can trust your man enough to show your vulnerable side, and that is so attractive to a man, and showing that vulnerable side from that place of feminine strength, not from, a place of being, oh, woe is me, and having a pity party and being in victim mode, but, from a place of, really loving and, as I say, appreciating yourself.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm going to the time's just run away, bring the episode to a close, but it's been lovely having you on, Melissa. We'll certainly have you on again and discuss a bit more around some relationship issues, and also probably introduce a bit about what you do around helping women with their confidence. So in terms of how the audience members can get in touch with you, what are your links or contact information?
So my business is called Evolve Global. So you can find me either on my website. I'm on Facebook. So my name, Melissa Howard, nice and boring. I generally show up first, which is quite good. And Instagram @Evolve with Melissa.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure that information is contained within the show notes, so that any listeners that would love to get in touch with Melissa can do so via the show notes, should they have missed your bit on the audio stating how people can get in touch with you. It's been fantastic, Melissa. Thank you so much for bringing out the information within the context of our conversation on this episode so that the listeners can actually get some real good gems and sharings on the back of that.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, so listeners, there we have it. Melissa Howard, thank you very much. And until next time, remember, true love starts with opening our hearts. Until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.